As the last remnants of daylight slipped beneath the horizon, a somber hush fell over the abandoned Rowan estate. Shadows stretched like skeletal fingers across the tangled grass and crumbling Victorian facade. The windows, empty and lifeless, stared out with an eerie vacancy, as if mourning the family, long lost to time. Here in the sleepy town of Blackfield, Massachusetts, our journey begins, a town where the name Rowan still sparks a chill in every whispered conversation. Welcome to the Ghastly Journal. I'm your host, and today we're unraveling one of the most unsettling family legacies ever recorded. The haunting history of the Rowan family, whose daughters vanished without a trace in 1953. But before we go further, a warning. What you're about to hear is not for the faint of heart. This isn't just another case of missing persons. It's a twisted web of eerie occurrences, occult undertones, and a darkness that consumed an entire lineage. Some of the townspeople I interviewed still struggle to speak their names, their voices trembling with fear. The Rowan family arrived in Blackfield in 1887, led by Elias Rowan, a wealthy textile magnate who bought 50 acres on the town's edge. Within 2 years, he built a grand Victorian mansion with a towering spire that watched over the valley like a sentinel. Locals called it Rowan's Reach, though others murmured a darker name, the Crow's Nest, a label that would prove disturbingly accurate. Elias didn't come alone. He brought his wife Constance, a woman noted in town records for her ethereal beauty and unsettling silence. Their children, twin boys, Edward and Edmund, and a daughter named Eleanor, rounded out what seemed to be the picture-perfect upper-class family of their era. But appearances, as Blackfield would learn, can lie. The first signs that something was off surfaced in the winter of 1890, when a hunter stumbled across a mysterious ring of stones deep in the Rowan woods. At its center, a shallow pit filled with feathers and bones, arranged too precisely to be natural. When questioned, Elias shrugged it off as an old Native American site he intended to preserve. The townspeople were skeptical, but most accepted the explanation. Most, but not all. Reverend Thomas Blackwood, the local priest, recorded his concerns in a private journal unearthed decades later. He wrote of strange behavior from the family, Constance whispering unintelligible words during communion, the children's eerie aloofness. Teachers noticed Eleanor's uncanny knowledge of herbs and their effects odd for her age. The twins couldn't have been more different, Edward charismatic and sociable, Edmund distant and observant, his intense gaze making others uneasy. The Rowans grew wealthier and more powerful, establishing a textile mill that employed much of the town, shielding them from scrutiny. But the sense of unease around Rowan's Reach deepened. Please give me a like and subscribe so I can be motivated to create more great videos. In 1907, Constance died suddenly, found in the garden in a peculiar pose that mirrored the stone circle's layout, her body surrounded by black feathers. Though labeled heart failure, whispers suggested something far stranger. Within 6 months, Elias remarried. His new wife, Cordelia Winthrop, was 20 years younger and appeared in town as mysteriously as she entered the family. No past, no relatives, only a brief stay at a boarding house before meeting Elias at a fundraiser. By then, the children were grown. Eleanor had been sent to Europe for schooling, rarely returning, and the twins had taken roles in the family business, though Edmund's tasks seemed ceremonial, while Edward ran operations. But Cordelia's arrival marked a turning point. According to Margaret Simmons, a local historian who has studied the Rowans for decades, the pattern was undeniable. After Cordelia joined the household, the number of missing persons in Blackfield began to rise, and the darkness that clung to the Rowan name grew deeper still. In the surrounding towns, young women, mostly those without close kin, began to vanish. Authorities dismissed the cases as isolated incidents. But when you map the timeline and geography, the pattern becomes chillingly clear, all pointing back to Rowan's Reach. In 12. The legacy of unease took a darker turn with the death of Elias Rowan. He was discovered in his study slumped over his desk as though deep in work. The coroner ruled it a death by exsanguination, severe blood loss, but not a single drop of blood was found in the room. Most horrifying of all, his eyes had been removed with surgical accuracy. Officials blamed enemies from his cutthroat business past, but no suspects emerged, and the case faded into silence. With Elias gone, control of the estate and the textile empire passed to Edward, the charismatic twin. Edmund remained at Rowan's reach, growing ever more reclusive, while Cordelia kept her role as the matriarch. Eleanor returned briefly for the funeral, but confided to a childhood friend that she couldn't bear to stay. "I can't breathe in that house," she reportedly said, before vanishing once more into Europe. From 1912 to 1930, Edward led the business through prosperous times, even amid war and economic uncertainty. In 1920, he married Lillian Barnes, a refined woman from Boston, and together they had 2 children, Elias II, born in 1921, and Constance II, named after Edward's mother, in 1923. Edmund never married. Townsfolk said he had moved into the tower room, and mill workers whispered about strange noises drifting from the estate at night, chanting in languages no one recognized, and the ominous flapping of unseen wings. Cordelia, now in her 40s, had earned a reputation as a local oddity. She often roamed the estate at twilight, talking to herself and gathering herbs. In 1921, she inaugurated what would become a notorious tradition, an annual masquerade ball held every winter solstice. Though lavish and exclusive guests often left disturbed. One 1925 attendee, in a letter now preserved at the Blackfield Historical Society, wrote, "The masks worn by the Rowans were unlike anything I've ever seen, real bird skulls and feathers with glass eyes that tracked you as you moved. I won't be accepting another invitation." The Great Depression ravaged Blackfield, yet the Rowan mill survived, further fueling gossip. Some suspected Edward had dealings with dark forces. Others believed he tapped hidden wealth. But the truth uncovered decades later in business ledgers during a tax investigation was more human and more damning. The Rowans had systematically underpaid laborers and doctored financial records to evade regulation. Then in 1935, Edmund vanished. No missing persons report was filed. Edward informed local authorities that his brother had gone abroad for his health. Yet no travel records supported the claim, and no letters ever arrived. When questioned, Edward grew defensive, repeating that Edmund's fate was a private matter. Around this time, Blackfield witnessed a strange phenomenon, flocks of crows gathering in numbers never seen before. The sky above Rowan's reach darkened with them so dense it could pass for a premature twilight. Experts from Boston came, observed, and left without answers. And so the town watched in quiet dread. As the 1940s dawned and World War II cast its shadow, a new chapter in the Rowan legacy began, this time through Elias II, the young heir to a name soaked in mystery. Made it into the official report, something we were told to forget. It was a small circle of stones found in the woods just beyond the scorched edge of the Rowan estate, eerily similar to the one discovered back in 1890. At its center, a burned patch of earth feathers scattered like ashes in a child's rattle. No footprints, no blood, just silence. Bennett never spoke of it again. Elias II had died in war, and Constance II had inherited not just the family home, but the weight of a legacy steeped in darkness. When she gave birth to twin daughters Eleanor and Cordelia, the pattern of duality in the Rowan line repeated itself once more. Richard Hayes, a war veteran turned town doctor, married into that legacy in 1951, despite Cordelia's thinly veiled disapproval. Their wedding was an intimate affair, held at the estate shrouded in mystery from the start. The twins' birth the following year, unaccompanied by any hospital record, took place within Rowans' reach under the supervision of Cordelia herself. Afterward, Constance II withdrew from town life, focusing solely on her art-haunting depictions of crows with unsettling, almost human traits. Then came July 7th, 1953. A fire erupted in the nursery wing. Firefighters arrived to an inferno already beyond control. Richard's body was found outside the nursery door, seemingly killed, trying to save his daughters. Constance II was found in the master bedroom, her throat slashed with no signs of struggle. No trace of the twins or Cordelia. Investigators claimed Cordelia committed the murder and arson, fleeing with the children, though how an aging woman escaped without a trace remained a mystery. The case was declared open but inactive. And then the whispers began. Locals reported flickering lights in the windows of the untouched wing, children's laughter in the trees, and flocks of crows gathering near the property, especially near those who dared discuss the Rowan family publicly. Some who tried to buy the estate claimed to feel watched, while others found dead birds outside their homes. What happened to Cordelia and the twins? Did the bloodline continue in some hidden corner of the world, or did it end that night, swallowed by fire and secrecy? What is certain is this: the story of the Rowans did not end with that blaze. In Blackfield, the past still lingers like smoke in the air, and Rowans Reach remains a decaying monument to a family whose legacy seems stitched into the very shadows. You've been listening to The Ghastly Journal. If you dare to know what lurks behind the walls of forgotten places and beneath the skin of local legends, be sure to subscribe and stay with us. Until next time, keep your lights on and your eyes to the trees. The crows are always watching. To lose control of the vehicle. She died on impact. The official cause of the crash was listed as driver error, but those familiar with the Rowan case weren't so sure. She had confided to a colleague days before that she felt eyes on her all the time and that the crows had begun following her home. That incident marked the last major attempt to publicly expose the secrets of Rowans Reach. But the questions lingered, and so did the fear. The clearing in the woods, the one discovered by police in 1953, was never marked, never mentioned again. At the center of that silent circle, no longer animal remains, but human ones, infant-sized, wrapped in feathers. The patrol captain had ordered the site sealed, buried, forgotten, claiming it would cause a panic. Yet the panic never went away. Throughout the late 1950s and into the 60s, efforts to restore or demolish the estate failed one after another. Contractors encountered inexplicable malfunctions, strange injuries, and workers flat out refusing to return. Many spoke of whispers drifting through the trees, sounds that didn't quite resemble human speech. Then came 1968. A developer from Boston bought the land for a steel planning to bulldoze the decaying mansion and raise a sleek subdivision in its place. But demolition day didn't go as planned. The foreman arrived to find every bulldozer, crane, and wrecking ball draped in crows, hundreds of them unmoving, silently watching. When they finally scattered and work resumed, the operator of the wrecking ball suffered a massive heart attack in the cab before the first strike. His replacement, visibly shaken, refused to take the controls. He claimed he saw a woman in period clothing staring down at him from a top-floor window, the same floor gutted by fire decades earlier. The developer quietly pulled out, citing structural and environmental concerns. The property reverted to county control taxes, unpaid, cursed by reputation. Through the 1970s, the mansion, half ruined and overgrown, became a destination for thrill seekers and ghost hunters. Reports poured in of watches freezing at exactly 3:33 a.m. Camera failures, sensations of being watched, and sometimes worse. Multiple visitors later reported attacks by birds, coordinated deliberate strikes that left physical injuries and trauma. In 1975, 5 graduate students from Miskatonic University's anthropology department snuck onto the property for an overnight study of local folklore. only 3 returned. Despite search parties combing the surrounding woods for days, no trace of the 2 missing students was found. The survivors were silent. One later took his own life, leaving behind a cryptic suicide note. They're watching through the crow's eyes. They always have been. In response, authorities eventually fenced off the estate and posted signs. But that didn't stop the brave or the foolish. The house itself crumbled over time. Roof collapsed. Vines tangled through shattered windows. Yet the central tower stood untouched, resisting nature's decay, as if protected by some force beyond explanation. Then in 1983, 30 years after the infamous fire, the Blackfield Gazette published a bold exposé by journalist Jessica Winters. After months of investigation, she suggested the Rowan family had long been involved in a secretive cult rooted in ancient pre-Christian beliefs. According to her research, their rituals centered around transformation, consciousness transfer, and spiritual rebirth into birds, specifically crows. Her piece included quotes from anonymous sources who claimed both Constance II and Cordelia practiced this dark art, and that the 1953 fire marked the final act of a generational ceremony. Most readers dismissed the article as sensationalized fiction. Still, it reawakened interest in the case and led to a brief reopening of the police investigation. But no new leads surfaced. 2 weeks after publication, Winters died in a sudden car crash. Witnesses said her vehicle veered violently off the road after a swarm of crows slammed into her windshield. Her death was ruled accidental. But those who had read her article, those who remembered the Rowans, knew better. The birds had always been watching. They still are, causing the project to be indefinitely suspended. The bones were determined to be from at least 2 children dating back to the early 1950s, consistent with the age and time frame of the missing Rowan twins. DNA testing was inconclusive, and the remains were quietly transferred to a state archive away from the public eye. Clara Bennett, undeterred, vowed to continue the project once the archaeological concerns were addressed, but construction never resumed. She vanished from public record later that year, her name quietly removed from all official documents. County employees who had dealt with her claim, they were instructed not to discuss the matter any further. Throughout the 1990s, the Rowan legend only deepened. Urban explorers drawn to the decaying estate found strange symbols etched into bark, and stone concentric circles with stylized bird figures at their center, eerily similar to motifs found in Edmund's journal. Some claimed to discover old photographs, brittle documents, or sketches hidden in the rotting structure, but all alleged artifacts vanished before they could be examined. Those who took them found their bags mysteriously emptied, their evidence erased. In 1997, a Hollywood studio announced a feature film based on the Rowan mystery. Production began with location scouts sent to Blackfield, but the project dissolved within months. Rumors spread that multiple crew members had abruptly resigned after experiencing disturbing visions. Identical dreams of twin girls with marble black eyes who stood side by side and whispered in perfect unison. The project was shelved, never officially addressed again. By the 2000s, interest in the Rowans faded into regional folklore. Yet some elements never changed. The central tower remained curiously untouched by weather and time, and no credible buyer ever came forward. Then, in 2008, a long, overlooked journal belonging to Edmund Rowan was discovered among old mill papers. Found by a worker who had hidden it before Edmund's disappearance in 1935, the journal was encrypted in a cipher that took months to decode. What was revealed was chilling. Edmund spoke of a covenant formed by Elias Rowan with those who watch from above. He described an ancient plan that would reach fulfillment with the 7th generation. He referred again and again to the Black Pinnacle, a ritual of transformation and spiritual convergence. But perhaps the most disturbing revelation came in his passages about Cordelia. She is not what she appears. I have seen her change her face like a mask. She has been with us longer than anyone remembers. She is the keeper of the knowledge. Anatomical diagrams followed comparisons of avian and human forms, with annotations on transference points and vessels for housing consciousness. His final entry, dated days before he vanished, read, "I cannot complete my transformation yet. The bloodline must continue to the 7th. I have seen what awaits, and it is glorious. Until then, I will watch and wait with the others." In 2015, citing danger to the public, the county approved full demolition of the estate. But the night before the demolition began, a violent storm struck Blackfield. Lightning hit the central tower repeatedly until the entire structure finally collapsed inward. By morning, it was reduced to rubble. During cleanup, workers discovered a sealed basement chamber beneath the tower. Inside, they found rows of cages, some large enough to contain a person. Books written in unknown languages lined the walls, along with ceremonial artifacts. Most chilling of all, a set of neatly arranged children's clothing from the 1950s, perfectly preserved, as though waiting for their wearers to return. A large mirror dominated one wall, its circular frame carved with entwined crows. The glass was black and reflective in a way that defied explanation. Several workers reported disorientation and vivid hallucinations when gazing into it. The mirror was sent to a university lab, but it never arrived. The truck was found abandoned in a rural field, the driver gone. Inside, only feathers remained. Then, in 2018, a woman named Clara Bennett surfaced. She claimed distant Rowan lineage through a forgotten branch of the family tree and presented paperwork that experts, albeit reluctantly, confirmed as genuine. She was pale-poised and hauntingly beautiful, with eyes one clerk later said that seemed far too old for her face. She was granted rights to the property and announced her intention to create a memorial garden to honor her ancestors. In early 2019, construction crews began work, but progress halted abruptly when skeletal remains were unearthed beneath the soil. Forensic examination confirmed they were likely those of 2 young children from the mid-20th century. Work was stopped. Clara vanished. No public statement was made. The site remains fenced, the land officially marked as under preservation review. But the locals know better. The Rowan name may have faded from headlines, but its legacy endures in shadows and whispers, and always in the watching eyes of the crows. Attempt to save their twin daughters, whose bodies were never found. Cordelia Rowan, the enigmatic matriarch, vanished that same night, and neither she nor the girls were ever seen again. The case, officially unsolved, has only grown darker with time. Forensic analysis of bones uncovered in 2019 revealed the remains of at least 12 individuals, primarily women. Their deaths tracing back to the early 20th century, aligning disturbingly with disappearances previously documented by historian Margaret Simmons as linked to the Rowan estate. The discovery ignited a criminal investigation, but progress halted abruptly when Clara Bennett, the woman who claimed to be a Rowan descendant, vanished without a trace. Her rented home was found completely vacant, devoid not only of personal belongings, but of any evidence that anyone had lived there at all. The lease had been paid entirely in cash. Her identification, once deemed authentic, was revealed to be an expert forgery. Surveillance footage showed her leaving the house the night she disappeared. But every frame featured the same bizarre anomaly, her face obscured by an unexplained visual distortion, a black smudge that resisted all enhancement efforts. Today, the former site of Rowan's Reach remains a restricted crime scene. While the official investigation has stalled with no new leads on Bennett or the victims buried beneath the estate, one thing continues without interruption: the crows. Blackfield has become home to one of the densest crow populations in New England. The birds seem unnaturally focused on the site of the old mansion and are often seen following individuals connected to the case. Dr. James Ferris, a local ornithologist who studied the phenomenon for years, has recorded behavior that defies known science. These birds don't act like normal crows, he told me. They're organized, intentional. Sometimes it feels like they're watching specific people, He showed me drone footage where the crows gathered into the shape of two small human figures. Figures they maintained with uncanny stillness for nearly 20 minutes before breaking formation. "I'm a man of science," Ferris said. "But what I've observed here, it shouldn't be possible." Then there are the sightings. Since 2020, reports have circulated of two young girls seen at the edge of the woods that now swallow the Rowan land. Witnesses unconnected and from different walks of life describe them identically around 5 or 6 years old, wearing outdated dresses, silent with deep, unnatural eyes. Always surrounded by crows. The girls never speak, never run, but vanish silently into the trees when approached. Authorities dismiss the reports as local folklore. Yet the consistency of these accounts is unsettling. Child psychologist Dr. Elena Rodriguez interviewed several of the witnesses. "These people weren't looking for ghosts," she told me. They didn't know each other, hadn't shared stories beforehand, yet described the exact same thing. The stillness of the girls, the way they seemed to speak without words, and most chilling, the crows responding to their presence as if protecting them. The last official update from the Blackfield Police Department came in early 2023. Chief Michael Donovan stated that there was no evidence connecting the remains found on the property to the events of 1953 or the disappearance of Clara Bennett, and reminded the public that the estate remains off-limits. Unofficially, however, the fear remains very real. One officer requesting anonymity confessed, "We draw straws to patrol that site. Nobody wants it. The moment you cross the boundary, the radios go dead. Just static. And sometimes you hear whispers, like children too low to understand, but close enough to unsettle you." So what are we to make of it all? Is the story of the Rowan family simply a tragic sequence of events, magnified by folklore and fear over the decades? Or is there something deeper, something darker woven through generations, culminating in fire, but lingering still? What we know is this: the Rowan family arrived in Blackfield in 1887, and from the beginning remained both prominent and deeply isolated. Over the years, they were tied to odd rituals, strange deaths, and the quiet vanishing of women and girls. In 1953, tragedy struck. And ever since, the shadows around Rowan's Reach have only deepened. Whether you believe in curses or not, some truths are undeniable. The dead were found. Clara Bennett was not. The girls are still being seen, and the crows, they never left. This has been the Ghastly Journal. If stories like this linger with you, be sure to follow for more. Until next time, keep your eyes open, because someone or something might already be watching. Fire consumed part of the estate in 1953, and with it, Cordelia Rowan vanished, along with the twin girls, Eleanor and Cordelia Hayes, who, if still alive, would be in their 70s today. Despite exhaustive searches, no trace of the elderly woman or the children was ever found. Then in 2019, the discovery of human remains beneath the ruins suggested a grim pattern linking the Rowan estate to a century's worth of disappearances, mostly women, stretching back to the early 1900s. Clara Bennett, who claimed to be a descendant of the Rowans, also vanished under inexplicable circumstances that same year. Sightings of twin girls appearing unchanged and always flanked by crows persist to this day. And then there are the crows. Their unwavering presence, their unexplainable behavior, their almost ritualistic surveillance, these details cannot be dismissed. The central tower's defiance of natural decay, its collapse following a lightning strike, the missing pages from Edmund Rowan's journal, the journal's references to a transformation, all point to something that defies our understanding. If we trust what Edmund wrote in his ciphered pages, the Rowan family was working toward a final ritual, the Black Pinnacle, a spiritual metamorphosis intended to be fulfilled by the 7th generation. Official records show only 4, Elias Edward Constance II and the twins. But Edmund's words suggest that Cordelia, who wore faces like masks, had been with them for far longer, possibly disrupting any attempt at linear counting. Perhaps generations in this context are not measured by birth alone. As I finished my investigation, I couldn't help but recall a statement made by Dr. Ferris. In Myths Across Cultures, he said crows are not merely omens or scavengers. They are psychopomps, guides between worlds. But what if that doorway works both ways, he asked. What if they don't just guide souls to the other side? What if they bring something back? The most unsettling thought isn't that the Rowan twins disappeared without a trace, but that they never disappeared at all. That they are still here, still watching, still waiting. Through the eyes of the crows, at the forest's edge. In Blackfield, people offer quiet advice. Don't speak the Rowan name too often. Don't linger near the ruins after sunset, especially when the crows begin to gather. And if you see twin girls among the trees looking your way, don't approach. Don't answer their gaze. Turn around, walk away, and whatever you do, don't look back. The last word on this story may well belong to Margaret Simmons, the historian who dedicated her life to untangling the Rowan mystery. When I asked whether she believed the supernatural elements, she said I deal in documented facts. And the facts show that generations of one family were involved in something they believed would change them. Whether it was real, that's beyond my scope. She paused, staring out her window at the crows on her lawn. Crows, she said, had followed her since she began her research. But I will tell you this, she added. In 60 years of digging through every photo of Cordelia Rowan, not once have I seen her eyes. Not one. Always obscured by shadow, by the angle, by damage. Always. And I've never seen those twin girls with my own eyes. But others have, and I've always wondered, are they waiting for me to finish telling their story? And if so, what happens when I do? 2 weeks after our interview, Margaret Simmons passed away peacefully in her sleep at age 94. That morning, the crows she had lived with for decades were gone. They have not returned. The Rowan estate remains abandoned, rotting under rusting tape and half-forgotten signs. The investigation is technically ongoing, but no one expects closure. The remains recovered were buried in Blackfield Cemetery beneath anonymous headstones marked simply unknown. But still people whisper. Still they see the girls, at the forest's edge, silent, watching. And overhead the crows continue to gather their cries, at times sounding almost like whispered words, come back to us. Come back home. Maybe the real horror of the Rowan family isn't in what happened to them, but in what they became. Because if Edmund's writings are to be believed, the Black Pinnacle wasn't the end of their journey. It was the beginning. And it's still unfolding right now in the shadows of Blackfield. For this, The Ghastly Journal. This has been the story of the Rowan family. Sleep well tonight. And if you hear a tapping at your window, it's probably just the wind. Probably. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into historical mysteries and unexplained phenomena. Share your thoughts in the comments, but maybe don't say the Rowan name too many times. The crows are always listening. Until next time, remember, some histories are better left undisturbed. Thank you all very much for watching my video until the end. I sincerely appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.